Paranormal in Pennsylvania may discuss topics such as suicide, murder, and other potentially upsetting things. Listener discretion is advised. Hello, and welcome to Paranormal in Pennsylvania,
where we discuss history and haunts.
Today's story takes us to a railroad museum. I'm Sarah.
And I'm David.
Let's get into it. So today we are headed to the Railroaders Memorial Museum in Altoona, Pennsylvania.
Can you say that 3 times for me fast?
I sure can't.
Okay.
It was hard enough for me to get through it the first time.
Yeah, I'm really proud of you. I was like, oh, that was quite the tongue twister.
Yeah. Because I keep thinking it's called the Altoona Railroaders Museum, but it's not. It's the Railroaders Memorial Museum. And this was a really cool place to see because it's actually next to a functioning railroad.
Yes, and businesses all around it. But it's also like a park. It was well developed. It looked like there were a lot of activities that are held there. I don't know if it's directly associated with the museum, but it was cool. I was like, I could see that on the weekends a lot of people probably come here.
Yeah, definitely. And the museum itself is huge because it's in one of the historical buildings there. So some history of it. The goal of the museum is to share the stories of the railroad workers and their contribution to industry in Pennsylvania and the Altoona area. They have artifacts, interactive experiences, and even life-size displays of the railroad workers and the railroad, work settings. So a really cool museum.
Yeah, very well developed out.
And it's not something that I would have thought would have a dedicated museum, kind of like the sewer museum that we almost went to in Amsterdam. It's really cool that they have museums on these other things because it's like, okay, art museums, yes, that makes sense. But I want to learn about railroads.
Right. And I don't know if everybody shares this interest in things like you and I do, like the sewers. Mm-hmm. How does that actually work? You flush the toilet. Where does that actually go? How does that work? Right. And it's it's kind of weird, but at the same time, it's fascinating of the engineering and science that goes behind it.
Right. Was it Amsterdam or was it Brussels? I think it was Brussels. Because especially something like that, it's like, how does the Sewer Museum of Brussels work? So this museum first opened in 1980, and it was in a different location initially, but it relocated to where it is today, which is the Master Mechanics Building. The building was originally constructed in 1882, so it's 142 years old. In the beginning, the physical and chemical labs were in this building, so they would do research and make supplies for the railroad. It was then used for a variety of other purposes, including offices, storage, and even local police headquarters.
Very multifunctional. We love a multifunctional space.
Yeah, and just because it's this big building, and it's in a prime location, being right by the railroad.
Oh, yeah.
There were actually 5 indoor firearm ranges in the basement.
That's cool.
It's really random to me. I guess police headquarters makes sense.
Police shooting range. That makes total sense.
But I also wonder, because it was physical and chemical labs, if maybe they were testing gunpowder or something.
Don't know. Yeah, really don't know that one.
Yeah.
But certainly, at least on the police side, that makes the most sense to me.
Yeah, it does. And this is the only remaining building of the original machine shops. On the grounds, there is a memorial roundhouse, the Harry Bennett Roundhouse. It was built in 2002, and then building paused due to lack of funding. Additional funding was secured in 2007, and in 2010, the building was finally completed. It holds the Pennsylvania Railroad K4 locomotive 1361, which is the museum's prized possession. And I do not know much about railroads, but this locomotive, everywhere I looked up, the Railroaders Memorial Museum, people were amazed that they have this.
Interesting. So, one thing that I'm wondering, and tell me if I'm right, is the roundhouse, is that the building where you would have an engine go into that was then rotated to the next rail line?
I do not know.
Okay. So otherwise I'm struggling. I don't know what a roundhouse is, if that's not what I'm thinking.
I don't know what a roundhouse is. I did not look it up. I did not think you would ask. But that's fine. The roundhouse was funded by Robert Bennett as a tribute to his grandfather, William Henry Bennett, who was the first foreman in the locomotive shops in 1889. And a roundhouse is?
A circular or semicircular building used by railways to service and store the locomotives.
Service and store locomotives in the roundhouse.
It's pretty close.
Yeah. I don't know why it's round.
Because I think you'd have like spurs off of it, and that's how you could store the different engines.
That makes a lot of sense, actually. Okay.
And then if there's like other railways or like other connections to the stations, you could feed them that way.
That makes sense. So William Henry Bennett, who was the first foreman of the railroad, he became a master mechanic in 1901 and actually oversaw the construction of the K4 1361, along with over 6,000 other locomotives, which seems like a lot for one person's career. I mean, how many locomotives are you making?
I don't know. I know very little about the construction of locomotives.
Yeah, but just think, okay, so let's think about it. So it took him 12 years to become a master mechanic. So he must have been at least let's say he's 35, right? When he becomes a master mechanic. Because it took him 12 years. He started when he was 23, let's say. How long did he work for 6,000 other locomotives?
Well, see, overseeing them doesn't mean that he had his hand directly in them.
But that means that they were done in a place where he could oversee it.
Right.
And it is a big building, but dang, it's impressive to me. I think people just underestimate how important the railroad was and how significant Pennsylvania was in the railroad business.
Oh, certainly. Well, Pennsylvania was a huge one because of the steel. So how do you transport that? That has to be by train, right? Steel's very heavy.
Yeah.
And then it goes out west as well. So, yeah. And I think actually, though, them having a large facility to build these locomotive engines would make sense with the location to all the foundries and such that were nearby. Yeah, so the iron foundry from...
the Allegheny furnace.
Yes, the Allegheny furnace. So I don't know if it was all constructed with iron or if there was steel as well. But it sounds like it was all right there so they could constantly keep production.
Well, that's what I'm saying, because if you think of, everyone, like the coke and the coal production in Pennsylvania, it's really everything you need. In addition to the locomotive, the roundhouse has other stuff, like a working 105-foot turntable, storage bays, and outdoor storage displays to demonstrate rolling stock collection.
A 500-foot turntable?
105-foot.
105-foot. DJs are going nuts for that one.
Oh my gosh. I couldn't predict what you were getting at there.
Yeah.
So, needless to say, this is a super cool museum, so if you're in Altoona, stop by. Now, to get to the paranormal claims, there are some named ghosts, character ghosts as I like to call them, and then some more general hauntings. A common haunting that visitors experience is seeing the apparition of railroad workers walking through the grounds. And they may appear in a variety of different work clothes, seeming to capture different uniforms dating back to 1882.
Okay. That makes sense to me.
It makes a lot of sense. Examples include flannel shirts and work pants, and they'll walk for a bit and then sometimes disappear into thin air or even walk through walls or doors. And people think that they're walking through the walls or doors because that's where entryways used to be when they worked there.
Right. The first question I have when I hear that is the building configured differently? Most likely is the answer. It's a museum now.
Yeah. And I'm sure it has changed in 142 years.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's actually a good point. It doesn't even have to be the museum that caused the configuration change.
Yeah, I'm sure just to optimize the building itself.
Right.
In fact, it seems like there are many passionate employees that actually refuse to leave. There's a story where the museum opened and held orientation, and the director went to confront two men who were standing in the hallway to tell them to enter the conference room so they could start the orientation. When he approached, they disappeared into the testing lab section of the building.
Like walked through the door?
Yeah, like walked through the wall.
Oh.
So people think that they were probably chemists when the chemistry lab was there.
Oh, that'd be cool.
Yeah.
That's different. I don't know how many spirits we've ever come to contact with on this podcast that have been scientists.
Yeah, the Poconos Candle Shop.
Oh, yes.
Had science. But I don't think really anybody else. Because I would be all over that.
Right. So that's kind of cool that it might be two chemists that were playing with, I don't know, chemicals or something.
As chemists do. There's allegedly one known spirit named Frank, and he is known to stay at the museum and has even been seen in various spots, so he's not stationary. One spot is the elevator, where he will sometimes be there when the doors open to let people in. So imagine you're just going to get on the elevator and then Frank is already there. But he stands facing the wall.
Interesting. That makes it so, again, configuration changes. The elevator might have changed as well. You might have had different stop-off points on the elevator.
But imagine how creepy. Not only are you getting on the elevator and there's someone mysteriously on it, but they're staring at the wall.
No, I get it. The social anxiety of being in an elevator, like if I get on the elevator and somebody's already like staring at the wall, I'm like, cool. You know, you don't like to face people, like let you have your space. Not a big deal.
I think I would stand with my back to the side wall so I could see both the door and the person. Because I'd be like, what are you doing?
Oh, I mean, like precautionarily, sure, but I wouldn't be like, what are you doing? Like in that regard, but then again, it's the male perspective, perhaps.
Yeah, I would be like, this guy's gonna jump me. He's gonna turn around and jump me. But he doesn't. And apparently he's fairly short and always dressed in white. Interesting appearance. He's been known to love attention and regularly tease people.
Sounds like a fun guy.
So the fact that he likes to tease people makes me wonder, is it a change in configuration of the elevator, or is he just messing with people and just being weird?
Both.
Could be. Maybe he knows there's been a change in configuration and he's like, I'm going to stand here like this and weird you guys out. He worked there in 1920 as part of the boiler working crew, and someone actually identified him in a photo, which I think is really cool. I always think it's cool when people are able to go look at photos and say, oh my gosh, that's the ghost that I saw, because it feels so much more legitimate to me.
Oh, so like when he was alive, just to be sure, like for clarification.
Yes, he was in the photo from 1920s boiler worker crew,
cool.
And someone had seen him and then went and looked at old photos in the museum and was like, oh my gosh, I just saw that person, and realized it was the 1920 crew.
Cool. I wonder why the white shirt, though, then.
I know. I was thinking that. It seems like a strange outfit for a boiler crew.
Right, because that would imply you're, shoveling coal if you're working with the boiler, right?
Yeah, or soldering it. I don't know. I don't know what people do. You're probably more correct than I am.
Right, because you're powering the building.
Yeah. And he has been also caught on EVPs, allegedly explaining to people that he died in a boiler accident.
That checks. It's a lot of pressure from like boiling the steam, whether that be for warming or powering. And I couldn't find anything about what exactly the EVPs said, just kind of the summary. That's still really cool. Like we said in other episodes, we love a character ghost. Yes. So we love an actual identified ghost that we can talk about. That's like real standout, especially when they're like a little cheeky like this or a little playful. Love it. Yeah. Well, there are more characters. So there's also a spirit that's seen by visitors in the gift shop, with items being removed from shelves and then set on the floor. So it's not that they're just knocked off. It looks as if they're physically lifted from the shelf and placed onto the floor. Many think this is the spirit of a young girl who's playing with the actual items, because some of them are also toys. There are reports of disembodied voices of a little girl being heard in the gift shop, so that's why they think that it's a little girl. But there's no formal records saying who this might be. But people assume that she might have been killed with the railroad. It could have been, killed with the railroad. Also, I'm not saying we know this factually or anything, but before the advent of child labor, often in like factories and whatnot, there were a lot of children. Accidents happened, children did die. I don't know if that's the case here as well. Yeah, I don't know if girls were really working at railroads, though. I know they were doing like looms and weaving and stuff. Sure, and it could have been the case that, she came to work with her father and then a tragic accident, take your pick of things that could have maybe happened. That's actually a really good point. Who knows? Could be anything. There's another group of 3 spirits that like to hang out together and even hide together. One of them is a little boy who often plays in the children's section of the museum. He's known to hide with the other 2 spirits, both female, that many believed were murdered. When a medium came to the museum,
The little boy led the medium to a location where he said the 3 spirits hide together.
That went like a hard left turn from like we don't really know how this one little girl died, but she likes to play with toys in the gift shop, to, oh yeah, and these 3 kids were murdered.
Well, the little boy wasn't. The 2 females were.
Oh yeah, that's, 2/3 is better than the whole, I guess. But 2 out of 3 murdered. Still not great. Yeah. Not loving it.
Once the medium got to the spot where the 2 female ghosts hide, she was able to interact with one of them, who asked her for new nylons, which I think is interesting because that in and of itself can help timestamp the ghost, because not many people say nylons anymore.
So what did you look up, like what time frame that might put the ghosts?
That would put them in like the earlier half of the 19th century.
Cool.
Because like in the 50s and earlier, people would say nylons. But if you think of like the Depression, people didn't have money for nylons. That's why they used to draw the line up the back of their leg to make it look like a seam.
Gotcha.
So I think she would probably be like 50s era.
Cool. So like in the 1850s.
Mm-hmm.
That's really interesting.
Yeah, I think it is. And I think this is where you really have to pay attention and think of things through a historical context, because someone could hear, oh, she asked for nylons. Okay, whatever. But if you think about it a little more in depth, this makes sense that it could give her a date of when she was alive.
Right. And then also with interacting with a spirit like that, you could change your diction or like how you speak to better match that time scenario.
That's a great point too. And something I was thinking of is, okay, people believe that these spirits were murdered. Well, now let's look into it more. If we know that she fell between this era, we know that there was another female that was murdered. Let's start narrowing it down,
Right. What we're doing is like talking about how really cool it is, right? Of just one word in a sentence that a ghost utters that you can really run with and figure out.
Yeah.
The context that it can provide. I don't know. To me, that's really cool.
Yeah. The critical thinking that comes along with it. Very cool. There's also auditory hauntings here. And honestly, before I realized that the railroad was functioning, I thought that the museum was either playing a train horn or it was a haunting. Because I'm a silly goose.
Yeah, the train horn at the train museum next to the active railroad. That's going to be a hard sell, and like is a spirit making a train horn.
I didn't know it was an active railroad, and we were there like right before they opened. And so I was like, oh my gosh, I hear train sounds. It is like, and because it was immediate. I was like, it is haunted immediately. And then I was like, oh, it's a literal train driving by. Yeah.
Yeah. That's okay. I mean, like, I love your enthusiasm.
Yeah, I was just really excited about it. And I was excited to be there because it's just such a different type of location. The true auditory haunting is not train noises. It's big band music.
What do you mean by big band? Like orchestra or?
No, the big band music is like a genre of music from like the 60s where they would have like big swing type sound, I think.
Oh, okay.
Like big band music. Should I just keep saying it and maybe you'll get it?
Yeah, exactly.
Good.
Can you also define it using the same words?
Yes, big band music is big band music.
Oh, thank you so much. I understand so well now.
Created with a big band.
Oh my gosh, that was from like the 60s, right?
Yep.
Wow. That was really helpful. Thank you.
You're so welcome. I'm here to provide information. So you might be thinking, this is a railroad. Where would big band music be played at this railroad? Well, there's a Kelly bar on site. So there's a bar, and the big band music has actually been captured on recordings playing in the bar.
Is it still like an active bar?
I think so. I think you can get drinks there only if you're at the museum, though. I think it's like you have to go through the museum to get to the bar.
Okay. Well, another reason to go.
Yeah. Definitely very interesting. And I like that it's a mix of the more generic hauntings, the auditory hauntings. I feel like you really are experiencing snapshots in time when you're here.
Yeah. It'll also be just really interesting with as we said, it was a multifunctional space. So there were a lot of things in there. So with the police station being there as well, I'm wondering if there are any spirits or anything from the police station or any of the other businesses that were a part of that building.
That's true. So, knowing what you know, would you visit this place of paranormal phenomena?
You know, I was kind of on the fence, and then you said the Kelly bar, and so now I'm in.
Now you're sold.
Yeah, but joking, of course, I would like to go. I would really like to do, firstly, just explore the museum and enjoy the museum. Would like to do a investigation there, surely. But it just seems like a really cool area. I'd love to go like on a weekend too. Because the parking lot was big at this place. Yeah. So you wouldn't have like such a big parking lot. That was also very well maintained as well.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
So like people come here clearly.
Yeah. I would love to go back. I don't really have any caveats for this one. I love a ghostly cast of characters, as we all know. And I know that they've had mediums and some paranormal investigators come in, so I do wonder how open to it they are. But I would go overnight. I would even go there alone. I think that the spirits there are just going about their business, and they don't really have many reasons to be upset, I was going to say, and then I forgot about the 2 murdered women. So I guess they do have some reasons to be upset, but they aren't malicious spirits.
Right. They're not malicious, not malignant, malign spirits. I see no reason not to.
Yeah, I would love to go. So I would definitely go back. No caveats. I would put me there alone at night. So that is the history and hauntings of the Railroaders Memorial Museum in Altoona, Pennsylvania. Thank you for listening to this week's episode, and tune in next Thursday to see what history and hauntings we discuss next. Stay spooky, my friends.